Hello everyone and welcome to my gamer dark side. I hope you're all doing very well. If you didn't notice, I was actually absent for a few months because I was taking my university internship at Próximo Nível, which translated to English it means next level, which is one of the biggest independent companies that revolves around game journalism here in Portugal. To make up for it, today I'm going to talk about the entire Mafia franchise. So yeah, this is probably going to be a long video. If you didn't know, I'm a big fan of all the games, and since the remake is almost coming out, I thought why not make a video where I can express my experience with all of the 3 games. It all started when I was just a kid and I played the first game by mere coincidence because it was one of the many games that came around with my PlayStation 2. When I played it, I was already a big fan of GTA games, but I never thought even for 1 second that Mafia was trying to replicate its core basics like some people unfortunately do nowadays. Mafia ends up giving off a completely different experience than the GTA games because it is more story driven and approaches a more serious side of the criminal life. When I finished the first game, I became a huge Mafia fan and ended up buying all of the sequels. For me, the sequels didn't exactly succeed on overcoming the legacy left by the first game, but they were still amazing experiences. Some of the aspects that I always enjoyed in the games were their iconic, very well scripted characters and accurate lifelike scenery. Even in the first game, by the time it was released, had some crazy realistic graphics. Mafia games are also connected with each other, sometimes by characters or one specific moment from the game. The references are always awesome to see and can bring lots of emotions back to the surface. For example, when I played Mafia 2 and reached the mission that was connected to the first game, when Vito and Joy were driving the car, I instantly realized that the radio of the car was playing the only music that you could hear when driving a car in Mafia 1. I thought that it was just strange at the beginning because of all the radio music that Mafia 2 had. It was just playing that only music that you could hear while driving in Mafia 1. What could this mean? Well, the meaning turned out to be kind of obvious. I realized what was the role of Vito and Joy in that mission. Without giving any spoilers, let's just say that I saw Tommy just like he was by the end in the first game. I knew what was going to happen, and I also understood that the music that appeared on the radio before I got to Tommy was kind of a warning for that moment that was going to happen, and I cried a lot after that. In general, Mafia games really do show what sort of consequences the criminal life can bring. The betrayals, the sacrifices, the contrasts of being in power, and then the emptiness that can come after that. Now, starting with the games, Mafia 1 was developed by Illusion Softworks and it was published by a gathering of developers. It's set during the 30s in the big city of Lost Heaven. The protagonist Tommy Angelo was just a common citizen that worked as a taxi driver until that one night he is caught off guard by 2 men working for mafia leader Salieri. Threatened by them, Tommy helps the 2 criminals escape a dangerous chase planned by the Morello Mafia. When succeeding, the 2 men offer an agreement of protection, and in the next day, Tommy ends up being attacked by 2 bandits working for Morello. He manages to induce them into Salieri's bar so that he could receive the promised safety. Salieri's men kill the bandits, and then Tommy is provided with a position in Salieri's family. With his life on the line, he has no choice but to accept it. What really intrigued me about the story of Mafia 1 was that Tommy started out as this common, innocent guy, and he was forced into this criminal world. He was fired from his job as a taxi driver, and this all happened during the Great Depression. If he didn't join the mafia, he would probably be dead in a matter of days by the Morellos, so he didn't have any choice. Then we see him, this innocent guy, drowning very slowly into this criminal underworld, and it really becomes messed up. Mafia 1 had such a beautiful world for its time. We could explore it by driving around with a big variety of vehicles or very slowly by foot. The first missions of the game revolve around a lot of driving, and I was really bad at it because of my crazy driving skills from GTA. In GTA games you have lots of freedom to drive how you want, but in Mafia things are a little bit different because police officers have restricted laws that quite resemble real life. For example, when I frequently disrespected them by driving too fast, running a red light, or causing an accident, they booked me with minor offenses that I could pay by using fines. The police can also book serious offenses such as acts of violence or visible usage of weapon that can lead to Tommy being arrested or confronted with the enforcement. When series of crimes do happen, even the minor ones can become serious offenses and make the police force increase. Now, this attention to detail was almost unreal for me to see in a game at that time, and it was really amazing. Despite having a linear story, we also have the option to go free roam and explore any part of the city, including some interiors of buildings. Each mission is so original and nostalgic for me, and don't even get me started with the music. When I saw the opening music from Mafia 1 playing in the trailer of the remake, it literally sent chills running down my spine, but in a good way, because it was a big part of my childhood and it made me so happy and feel so old at the same time. When it comes to combat, this game is hard. Tommy's health drains fast like a blink of an eye, and the textures can make it difficult to shoot targets with more precision, especially when they are too far away. I always had a bad eyesight, and when I did the mission You Lucky Bastard in the part that was in the harbor, I could hardly shoot the guys that were on top of the towers because they were too far away and I couldn't see them. Now to Mafia 2. Mafia 2 was also developed by Illusion Softworks, but now known as 2K Sec and published by 2K Games. The game is set between the 40s and 50s of Empire Bay. In younger times, Vito Scaletta was arrested from robbing a jewelry store with his friend Joey Barbaro. Due to the United States joining World War II, he had the option to be arrested or to combat in war. Vito decides to spend a few years in the army until he returns home after being injured. He then discovers that his dad left a huge debt for his mother and sister. Upon reuniting with Joe, who was working for the Clemente Mafia, Vito decides to look for an opportunity to pay his father's debt as quickly as possible. Joey offers Vito some jobs in the Mafia of Clemente, and Vito starts to slowly make a name for himself, even working for the Falcone Mafia, which was Empire Bay's most powerful criminal organization. In Mafia 2, I really enjoyed seeing the friendship between Vito and Joey evolve. Joey was such an awesome and funny character. He made me laugh so much. Vito and Joey joined the Mafia because they wanted to get quick cash so they could live the American dream, and because Vito also wanted to pay his father's debt. I don't think they were exactly forced into it just like Tommy was, because Vito always had the option to choose other jobs, but instead he decided to pursue this one. They go through so much together, including ups and downs, to then cross a line in a criminal life that they couldn't just return from. And it's really interesting to see how the story progresses into that moment, maintaining its realistic graphics but with a huge upgrade compared to the first one. Mafia 2 had a bigger map with a more dynamic environment for us to explore. However, I always felt that the map was kind of hollow. Besides going to restaurants and maybe order a drink or go to stores to buy some clothes, there isn't much you could really do. I mean, you could always try and catch the collectibles, especially the images from the Playboy magazines, but for me that ended up being kind of boring in the long term. Compared to the first one, the pedestrians are more reactive to the world around them, and the city had some amazing details that reflected so well the ambience of the 40s and the 50s. It's through those details in the city that you can also notice the big transition between those two decades that Vito even comments about it when he later gets out of prison. Unfortunately, the game doesn't have a free roam option like in Mafia 1, but it does let you explore the open world of Empire Bay across missions. The game also uses an improved and more complex lock-picking mechanism compared to the first one. While driving cars, you have a big selection of music to hear. Driving mechanics stayed the same, but vehicle speed increased a lot. The police officers were less strict because we can just easily get away from them or use a bribe option to go undercover. Combat was also made easier with the new cover system and targets were faster to kill. I don't know if this was made on purpose because before joining the Mafia, Vito wasn't just a taxi driver like Tommy was, but instead a trained soldier from World War II. Overall, I felt like Mafia 2 was easier to handle than the first one, to the point that I even challenged myself by playing it on a hard difficulty level, and it wasn't that hard. Next, it's Mafia 3 that takes place in 1968 and centers around Lincoln Clay, a multiracial war veteran. When returning from the Vietnam War to New Bordeaux, Lincoln finally finds a place that he can call home, which is the Black Mob. This Black Mob is in debt to Mafia leader Sal Marcano, and upon doing a successful collaborative mission, the Marcanos ended up betraying the Black Mob, killing almost all of them. However, Lincoln manages to survive, and with his family being taken away from him, he decides to go on a rampage of revenge. He creates a small team to take down the city mafia and build a new empire for himself. He manages to reunite three allies, Cassandra Burke and Vito Scaletta, which is the former protagonist in Mafia 2. In Mafia 3, the story unrolls in a very interesting and badass way because we see Lincoln create his own mafia business to destroy Marcano's mafia leadership. Lincoln is very driven by revenge and maintains a strong attitude throughout the game. For me, it was really satisfying to see him rise from the ashes and conquer so much. Another thing is that Mafia 3 has more than one ending. I think there are 3 in total, and they are all pretty awesome. I just wish they could have also put more endings in the other games. That would just be perfect. Such as the previous games, Mafia 3 delivers a beautiful and gigantic world that constantly adapts itself to the actions of the player. The police goes from being restrictive to more oppressive due to the time and social context of the game. The game is set during the late 60s in a fictive New Orleans, when racial discrimination is still at its peaks in America. For this reason, the cops act more aggressively towards Lincoln. Combat was made very easy because, just like Vito, Lincoln came from war, but this time the Vietnam War, which means he was very used to using weapons and was trained for combat. The cover mechanism still exists, but during combat you always have the option to choose a more stealthier approach. The stealth mechanism was also present in Mafia 2, but I only remembered using it in a few required missions. However, in Mafia 3, this form of combat is very present and was made an easier option to eliminate opponents. Despite having great characters and original story missions, I always thought that the side quests were kind of repetitive and revolve around doing the same objectives but in different locations. This was the only reason that made Mafia 3 becoming my least favorite of the franchise. Also, just like in Mafia 2, there isn't much going on around the map that you can do besides doing those side quests. I admit that the ally system was very well done. You could choose to favor some of them while ignoring others. This came with consequences. For example, if you choose to do more missions for Vito, you could receive unlockable benefits, and this could happen with either Cassandra or Burke. But if you decide to ignore all of them, they could end up betraying Lincoln. So my advice is to stay neutral with all of them and to distribute things fair and square to avoid future confrontations. So to end this video, I wanted to give my thoughts about the release of the Mafia Definitive Edition, including the remasters. In my honest opinion, I think that Mafia 2 and 3 didn't need a remaster because they were still recent launches and they still had modern graphics, so there was much that could be changed about them. I think that Hangar 13 could have put more focus on the Mafia remake instead of updating tiny details and adding insignificant elements to the other games. Hangar 13 also admitted that Mafia 3 didn't receive a remaster, but instead just an update, which for me actually made more kind of sense, but this still didn't fit quite right with the term Definitive Edition. I guess that overall the remasters were just a strategy so they could make more money for the development of the remake, as the remasters of Mafia 2 and 3 were released almost 4 months earlier from its launch. Now I'm really excited about the remake, to revisit my childhood memories in a completely rebuilt game of Mafia 1. Hangar 13 is expanding the story more, its characters and dialogues. I'm really excited to see how Sarah will turn out because she was a really enigmatic character and Tommy's love interest, but we didn't get to see much of her in the first game. Of course, I'm also excited to see all of the other characters and their new voice actors. I'm excited to try for the first time the motorcycles and to explore an even more beautiful version of Lost Heaven. I feel like it's going to be a completely new experience of Mafia 1 and I can't wait to try it. And I'll end this video here. I hope you enjoyed listening to my rant about all of the Mafia games. If you did, don't forget to share, to like and subscribe. It's always appreciated, and I'll see you really soon. Bye bye!